Yeah, so if you have questions, I do have to say it was very, very difficult for me to read Nikki's part that I knew was her part in the play because she's a personal friend of mine, and I was almost in tears, honestly. But anyway, thank you so much, and now I'm sure you have questions maybe for Nikki, for any of the cast members, or what have you. So please speak up, and Paul will come around with the microphone.
Actually, I have two questions. Were the Japanese on the East Coast put into camps? And were the Germans that were put into camp prisoners of war, or were they American civilians that were Germans that were put into camp?
Well, there was a roundup of Germans, Italians, and Japanese, living in America who were from the Allied countries. And there were many German POW camps in the Midwest. I have a friend who wrote a novel about that, and she's from Minnesota. However, there was more discrimination against the Japanese because, and that was a kind of West Coast phenomenon. There were very few Japanese living in the East Coast. Most immigrants from Europe come through, the first sight of America is the Statue of Liberty. Asians come through the Pacific, and Angel Island is one of their first stops.
Those on the West Coast were in what was called the exclusion area. So starting from Washington all the way down California and Arizona. So those that were in the exclusion zone were sent to camp. And if families that knew about the exclusion area, some may have moved, eastward or more inland, and they were not subject to being imprisoned.
I think there were some Japanese families in the Albuquerque area during the war.
Mm-hmm.
Were they put into camps? Were they in the position of seeing other Japanese in camps where they were not?
Yeah. There were, they also had families still on the West Coast that were put in. I don't know if Nikki's going to do another play on this, but some of the more popular one is in Gallup with Hershey Miramura. The story in Gallup is that the citizens there in Gallup said they were, the Japanese in their community were not going to be sent away and everything. In Clovis, they were evacuated because the Japanese, the railroad workers there were in trouble, or they were not safe. They were being threatened, so they were taken away. But in other communities, they voted not to send their Japanese neighbors or friends to camp. But those in the exclusion zone had to go.
I just wondered whether any of the detention and incarceration was done by contracting out, or whether it was all done through the military.
Most of it were done by the military. We have here in New Mexico is a Department of Justice camps, and but the orders were military. There's a gentleman. Oh.
My father was interned from Chicago. So.
Did he happen to go to the West Coast? Because although some people may have lived elsewhere, they were on the East Coast at the time the Executive Order 9066 was signed, and they were caught and had to be sent. They were forced into camps. But taken from Chicago, I'm not sure about that. But we, quite a few of the internees also came from Hawaii too. They were all rounded up.
Okay. Well, the thing is, when they tossed us out, my father went back to Chicago, and my mother and her family moved back to California. And I'm sort of in between.
Yeah, there are a number of people that were caught up during that time. They were either attending school or working out there, and when the order was sent, they were all forced to go.
We can take a few more questions or comments. Anyone would like to do that?
This is a little bit in response to the other gentleman's question. I knew several families in the Midwest whose grandfathers had been German prisoners of war, and they were in camps in the Midwest, but during the day they went out and did the farm work that the other people
Yes.
that were there to do.
Yes.
And they were all treated so kindly. They immigrated here after the war and brought their families. So it was a completely different experience. They were in camps, but nothing like this.
It was, as you heard, it was a period of war hysteria. People were afraid that among us there were, like what's happening right now, terrorists right in our own neighborhood and everything. So that's why they were all treated as prisoners when in fact they were citizens.
But there was not nearly so much hysteria about Germany and Italy, which we were at war with as well.
Hi, I'm from Clovis, New Mexico. My name's Michael Gray. I'm proud to call some of my friends, not just the actors, but she's working on this story about Clovis Next. Here it happened in New Mexico a month prior to the order. They didn't get much warning, but you talked about Italian and German prisoners of war in Hereford, Texas, just 45 minutes over the border. That's where the Italian prisoner of war, enemy combatants truly taken from the war, were brought, and they worked in the fields. And they truly were treated very kindly. In fact, at one point when they left, one in particular, Dr. DeMaio, was a prisoner of war and came back to the United States and practices as a doctor in Clovis, New Mexico. I visited that place. The gun turret had been turned into a grain elevator. I'm from that area, so when you look around, it doesn't look like a normal farm field. You can still see the barbed wire and the things of that nature. But again, they were treated so well compared to this that years later, farmers from that area decided to go over to take a nice vacation in France. And somebody came out, and they were Italian, and they said, are you from Clovis? And they said, well, yeah. And they said, do you know this place? We were imprisoned there. And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we do. We take care of the chapel to this day. And up until 3 months ago when I went there, they're still always remodeling. There's a ladder in there, and they keep it painted. On the railroad property, however, in Clovis, we still can't get back on there to see where everybody lived and called their homes. So look forward to next time. Please come out and see us every year because there's always a continuance to this story. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question up here.
I am Mandy Pino. I graduated from Gallup High School in 1942. Remember very clearly the president calling us all to study hall to announce the war. We had a very small population of Nisei in Gallup. We also had the biggest contingent of soldiers on the death march from Guatemala. It was amazing, and more amazing to me now, to understand that we did not have any hysterical discrimination against our Nisei community.
Yes, we can all be proud of Gallup for that.
Good afternoon. I just want to thank the group that did this wonderful presentation. It's an educational, it's important, and we need to do more of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
fortunate to share a room many times with Ruth Hashimoto, who was very proud of being an American citizen, and she was very instrumental in the formation of the Sisters Cities organization here in Albuquerque, because she formed the Albuquerque. Now I can't names don't come to me. The Japanese city, which is a sister city. I have a question. Who wrote the script for this? It was wonderful.
Mainly, these are the words of other people. So, this cast represented many, many lives through many time zones. So I feel not so much a playwright, but like somebody, who...
Oral historian.
And that's really fascinating to me. And I just want to tell all of you that you are all living history, the adjective as well as the verb. And that sharing our stories is, the first step toward understanding one another. And that can be done at the simplest, most grassroots level. So I hope that's where we can have a start. In the future, I hope to have free workshops, oral history workshops where people, reading and eating, come together. So I'll have potluck readings, and people will come, and it's not oral history. It's story sharing. It's conversation. Anytime people get together, they share things about their lives. And then if you have somebody who is interested in assembling them and weaving them into some kind of tapestry, then you have an exhibit, or you have a show, or you have some kind of a presentation. And that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years, going from community to community and leaving them with the techniques of doing this. So I hope that if you're interested, you'll contact me, and I'll let you know when we put this together. In the meantime, there are a couple of announcements, right? There are a couple of people here who have an exhibit coming up.
Let me make one comment since you brought up Ruth Hashimoto. The men that were incarcerated, some went out to war. Ruth left one of the camps. She had to leave her husband behind, but she took her daughters because she went to the MIS school, the Military Intelligence Service. Some of the women were recruited from the camps to teach there because she was fluent in Japanese. And that's how she served her time during the war, was as a Japanese instructor for the MIS.
We do have announcements. We have a couple of teacher training workshops, one in Las Cruces and one on Saturday. Can you talk about that? And also we have the clothes exhibit.
Yeah, I'm Victor Yamato. I think Nikki's mentioned me a couple of times. Just a couple of quick announcements that are, again, part of our New Mexico JACL project activities as we're helping tell this story, these stories. As Nikki just mentioned, our chapter, in cooperation with the National Japanese American Historical Society, is putting on teacher training workshops. One next Thursday in Las Cruces, primarily to the high schools and middle schools down there, and then next Saturday, a week from today, in Albuquerque, in conjunction with the Albuquerque Public Schools organization. So these are specifically set up to provide a curriculum to the teachers that are focused on the Department of Justice camps in New Mexico. And so it's very pertinent to give that background and also to focus on New Mexico, because obviously the teachers hopefully can use this as a resource to add to their history teaching, social studies teaching in their classes. The other project that I'll mention is that two things. One is, as Nikki mentioned, we have these books on sale, Confinement in the Land of Enchantment, which we just completed last summer, and this publication documents the 4 Department of Justice type prison camps in New Mexico that held Japanese Americans during World War II. 2 you've heard about, Lordsburg and Santa Fe, but there were 2 smaller instances as well, Fort Stanton and the imprisonment of the people from Clovis that were picked up. They were held in Old Latone Ranch in Lincoln County. So the particular publication that we have for sale talks about that in quite a bit of detail, including there's 1 chapter on Clovis, there's 1 each on Fort Stanton, Lordsburg, and Santa Fe. And then continuing in that project, we have the current funding from the National Park Service to where we're going to take those stories that are in the publication and put those into a traveling exhibit and community presentation that we're taking to Santa Fe, Lordsburg, and Fort Stanton. As some of you know, we've already done that in Clovis. We had that particular presentation, and we had, fortunately, 3 of the survivors who were picked up in Clovis, and they were able to tell their firsthand memories of that time, where in January of 1942, they were picked up, and obviously they were young kids, but they still remember some of the traumatic episode in terms of being picked up by government agents and then being carried down in patrol cars, etc., to Fort Stanton area for imprisonment for about a year before they went to the family camps. So just a couple of announcements. We're doing many more activities in conjunction with Nikki's projects, and so there's many opportunities to hear about these experiences and hopefully get educated and spread the word about these World War II time frame.
Thank you, Victor. We do have to vacate this building at 3 o'clock. So if you want some time to speak, to look at the books, to speak to any of us one-on-one, I want to give you that opportunity. Thank you again so much for coming, and I hope this is the beginning of many things for you and your circles, your friends.
This is a book that is related to camp. It's a children's book, and we have the author that's right here, so if you're interested in the book, she can sign it for you. This is based on true experiences, true letters from children who were in camp. And the librarian in San Diego County who was gracious to these children. She sent them books, she had their children write letters to her, and some of their letters are in this book. These are true accounts. So if you want to see the book and the author, Cynthia Brady.
My friend Sally Alice. I keep talking about my friend.